Welcome to the Thought Leader Podcast. Get ready to hear powerful stories, unique perspectives, and bright ideas to impact the world in the areas of health, wealth, and relationships. We interview experts, authors, executives, entrepreneurs, and other industry thought leaders who share new strategies, practical tools, and best practices to accelerate your personal and professional results. This is the Thought Leader Podcast. And now, here's your host, Elena Fernandez.
Well, hello, thought leaders. It is an honor for me to be at the Thought Leader Podcast today and have a special guest. Her name is Corinna Stoeffl, and she'll tell you more about her. But let me just start with saying that she is amazing. We're going to learn a lot of wisdom from Corinna, and she has been exploring this question, who am I? That is like a thread through most of Corinna's life. And the answers she had found growing up didn't satisfy her. That's just who she is. And then a move from Germany to the USA, which was supposed to be 2 or 3 years, became permanent. Other explorations were good for some time, and then Corinna became restless again. So there was more. She did not just know how to get to that space. And we're going to talk about that because Corinna still asking that question, and she's no longer searching from the intellect for an answer. It is from her core now. We'll learn all about that, and she and I are going to explore what that means, because that's what she does, that's her journey, and how she shows up in her life and having her voice. Corinna, it's so wonderful to have you here. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Elena. And I am so excited about being here and having this conversation with you. And yeah, like most people, I did answer, who are you, from that mental space, listing data points, because that's ultimately all it is. I'm a daughter, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, da, 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 da. But how satisfactory is that? Is that all I am? And that was where the dissatisfaction came in. And then being part of a group, I got introduced, we are all infinite beings. Now, as a math teacher, I know what infinite means, but what the heck did that mean, lived? What did that mean for me, who I am? And it was, again, not satisfactory. And then last year, I felt called to join an online course and online community called Journey of Intrinsic Health. And module 1 of that 8-week course was titled Be. Okay. And then the presenter went into who are you and shared who he is from an intellectual perspective. And knowing him, I could see that. And then he said, and listen to how that is different from answering it from my core. And now I was, okay. And he answered it. And I was just totally blown away. The energetic difference. And it felt such a full description of who that being is. Totally fascinated me. So I was asking 2 questions. What's the core? What do you mean with that?
Yeah.
And I want to know the answer for myself. So he described where the core is. And I invite you to visualize the skeleton and the pelvic area. Now visualize one of those small TV antennas with the receptor and settle that into the pelvic area. It's going to be tilted, and the receiver is sort of going to be, interestingly, at the solar plexus. Now, the solar plexus, if you Google it, is the confident, assertive, make decisions from a place of knowing, from intuition. That was a lot more along the lines that he was talking about when he described himself. So I was utterly fascinated by that. And yes, I learned a lot with the rest of the module, but that was for me the key point.
Yeah.
And I have worked since then with that idea of who am I truly?
And what did you do to find your answer?
Good question. I asked that question, who am I truly? And I've learned to let go of the question, to sort of shut up. Because if I constantly talk by asking the question, I cannot hear the answer. I'm overriding it. And it took me a while. It's a big question. At least I knew it was a big question for me. And I had to let go of all the ideas that I had and what I wanted it to be, because I wanted to be significant, etc., all that. And I also kept re-listening to the instructor's statement, just to perceive the energy, to feel that energy in my body. And eventually I started to perceive an energy that felt was me. And I then, I would say, tried to translate that energy into words so I could express it. But it took a while to find the right words, because I wanted to catch the energy that I perceived. And again, words are not necessarily a correct energetic translation. It takes some tweaking. So it took me a while to come up with the statement where I felt really, yes, that's me. And on some level, it was scary. And I will share that statement with everybody a little bit later towards the end of our conversation.
Okay, I'll wait, because I'm definitely curious to hear about that. And within that, how long does it take to get into that question, and what steps could our audience take? Could we take to get to a really good answer?
The first thing is be quiet. Just relax. It's almost like get into a meditative state. And then ask the question, who am I? And since you're asking that question from your core, put your hands over your core where the receiver would be, meaning the solar plexus.
Oh, okay.
And just be there, be present. And then shut up. Let it go. Allow the universe to bubble up, to have it come up. And as with me, I didn't get an answer right away. It took me a good 1 to 2 weeks. I forget how long it actually took me. And it's going to be different for everybody. But stay there for a few minutes and then go back, do your day. And then at another day, come back, be quiet, put your hands there, until you start perceiving an energy that is bubbly for you, I would almost say it feels like champagne. It's valuable. It's great. And the answer may come also totally unexpected. It's often for me that I get an answer and I realize, oh, I asked a question and that's the answer to that question.
Mhm.
So be patient and allow the universe, allow God to answer it for you, because there is more to it than what we can imagine,
Mm.
you know, and don't try to be someone else. Even though I'll share my statement, don't try to imitate me, or don't try to make somebody, oh, I admire that person. It's not who you are. And
Yeah.
that's the question, you know. And since we're talking about it, I'll share with you now what my answer was for me.
Yeah.
I am the water that nourishes the ability to see beyond the current world to a beautiful, connected world, and that washes away everything that stands in its way.
Mm.
So the water can be gentle, rain, nourishing, but it also can be a flash flood.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. And you mentioned earlier, you're talking about significance and how this answer, we answer it from a place of wanting to be significant. So, what is the difference for you? And, how did you used to answer this question? And what is the difference now that you answer it in this way?
It's truly letting go of my points of view and beliefs and knowing that the universe has my back, that I will get the answer, trusting that. If I'm just patient enough and shut up so I can hear the universe. And as these energies start to bubble up for me, I could feel, there was this excitement that started to come in, and that's me. That actually feels like me. And at the same time, initially it was scary, because as a sudden, that statement asked me to step up in a way that I had not been willing to step up.
Mm.
And so it took me a little bit to step up to that. And today I am willing to acknowledge the fact that I'm a thought leader. I knew I was a thought leader, but I didn't want to acknowledge it because it was too big, too scary, you know.
Yeah.
Today I'm willing to say, yeah, I'm a thought leader. I see possibilities that others don't necessarily see. And I look at the world in a different way. And to own that, not make it right, I no longer have the need to fit in. Now, I knew I didn't fit in since high school, way back when, but I always had the need to fit in.
Tell us more about that, because I think that that's an epidemic, right? We come in and we want to fit in this world.
But is that because we're told we need to fit in? That is how the world works. You need to fit in. If you don't fit in, you are going to be alone. You're going to be lonely. Not necessarily true. You may not be part of the mass, but there will be people in your life that are comrade in arms, so to speak, that are also not fitting in and can be in allowance and appreciation of who you are as a being. and we mutually enrich each other. I love to have conversations with someone who is as little fitting in as I am, because it enriches my mind and it gets me thinking and it gets me to look at things. And it's fun. It
Yeah.
makes life, at least for me, a lot more fun than just being part of the masses and I'm doing what everybody else does. And yeah.
Wow. Amazing. And so when did you start to, like you call this, step up into, calling yourself a thought leader, but also stepping up into not fitting in and just living authentically?
I I can't tell you exactly what year it was, but because it's a process. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you do small steps along those lines, but I noticed that I was truly willing to have my voice when I started to talk about things that were important for me. And it even became more clear for me as I started this year to podcast. I have been trying to podcast because one does that if you have a business,
Yeah.
but I try to please everybody. Yes, I did a little bit of different look at common subjects, but I tried to tone it down, not to offend anybody. And
Mm.
it's not even today, it's not that my intention is to offend anybody. I don't mind if a listener doesn't like what I'm saying, disagrees with it. That is fine. That's where the richness is. We can learn from each other, being inspired of looking at something in a different way. I love podcasts that invite me to do that. And I remember years ago, I would have said, that's bullshit. That's not real. You're just somewhere out there in the ozone layer. Today, I thoroughly appreciate that.
Mm.
And I go in and I may not agree with it fully, but that's not the purpose to agree with it fully. The purpose I see is to be enriched and start looking from different angles.
Mm.
Because, you know, if you look at a house straight on, you see one side. You cannot describe what the other three sides are. You can only assume what they might be. If you look at the house from a corner, you see two sides, but it still is not the whole house. And that's how I see those other podcasts. They describe another side or
Yeah.
two sides of the house, and I can agree or not agree with it, and that's fine. It doesn't mean they are wrong, doesn't mean I am right. I no longer have that need, to be right or to fight for my point of view
Mm.
or to fight for or against anything, whatever that may be in the moment. I can be in allowance of it and still not necessarily agree. And being in allowance does not mean that I condone something.
Yeah.
It just means that I am choosing not to do that thing, whatever that is, not
Mm.
to act that. And I remember having that awareness in the 90s that
Wow.
I have the full spectrum from an angel to the worst possible to the devil, so to speak. And it's my choice where within the spectrum I want to fall.
I
Just
love
because
that.
it's available doesn't mean I have to choose it.
That is so powerful, Corinna. And let me ask you this, because I'm sure that this sounds really enlightening and refreshing for a lot of people that are listening and viewing today. How do we get started to be in allowance, like as you call it, and to prevent us from being in judgment or like you said, defending our point of view and trying to be right.
How much does each one of us have a point of view of how the world works? And how much do we see the world through that lens? And if we want to go beyond it, we need to let go of that belief. Because if I have a fixed belief, that becomes the basis of judgment. This is right, this is wrong, this, you agree, you disagree with my point of view. And there is no absolute truth, capital T truth. There is my personal truth, there's your truth, there's somebody else's truth. There is no absolute right or wrong. Without darkness, we would not have any idea about what light is. It takes that juxtaposition, that polarity, to get what one side is. And so creation has polarity in it. So if I can be an allowance of creation, I can be in it and not fight it.
Yeah.
I can participate.
And so in the moments of darkness or in which we witness darkness in others, what are some tools or what is one quick tip that you can give us in how to handle that gracefully?
I can only tell you how I handle it, and that's for me, a story that I read in the works of Neil Donald Walsh about the little soul that was in heaven and wanted to go back down to earth, and said, how am I supposed to be on earth? I don't judge anymore. It's fine. I'm an allowance of everything. And then one other soul took pity and said, okay, I'll go down with you and I will treat you as badly as I possibly can, knowing that that's not who you are. Will you promise me to remember that that's not who I am either?
Wow.
And so I can only judge on some level what I have experienced, because how would I know otherwise that this is either good or bad if I haven't experienced it?
Yeah.
And keeping that in awareness helps me a lot. And that doesn't mean that I never, ever judge. No, I'm absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also become aware, oops, I just judged.
Mm-hmm.
Let me take that back. Let's take a step back and look at it from a bigger perspective instead of this narrow, blinder perspective.
I love it. I love it because, yes, I think it's an automatic reflex almost, right? You do it or we do it in a fraction of seconds. And I love that reframe. Let's look at it from another angle, or as you said, what other side of the house they might not see, right?
Yeah.
I love that. And that story is so powerful. And I really appreciate you sharing that. Tell us about a little bit of your background, because I think, it's really important to highlight that you've written a book, you've studied for many years. And so what are some of the things that have informed this journey of yours so that we can kind of take a look at where you've been in this study and in this research?
I mean, let's start with the beginning. I grew up in Germany and I studied mathematics to become a teacher. priced real estate, you know, and then coming over here, and in a way, as a sudden you are thrown into a new environment, and I started to explore things. I became interested in learning more about other religions. I came across rites of passage. That fascinated me. How would that be? And I did a number of rites of passages, as well as trained in becoming a rites of passage guide to support people through that process. And the way we did it was basically spending mostly 4, sometimes only 3 days and nights in the wilderness by ourselves. Yes, there was a base camp for safety, but we were by ourselves, and I had to deal with absolute bliss and total boredom and anything in between.
Yeah.
different quests, different, scenarios. But it also informed me about, or taught me, how much everything is connected. That we, in our drive to divide everything into the smallest components, we no longer see the connection.
Interesting.
It's all separate, individual entities. No, it's all connected. Nature is connected. And those experiences, for me, taught me to, if I have a question, how is nature dealing with that? What is going on in nature in that regard? And looking through that other lens. And that allows me to look at things in a totally different way. I thoroughly enjoyed with my daughter, for instance, we spent hours walking around a subject and looking at it from all kinds of different angles. And we called it doing mental gymnastics, because sometimes you have to bend over to look at it from underneath or look down at it. But it really is that enrichment and that practice of looking from different angles. And that is what allows you to see possibilities.
I love that. And now that you talk about nature and how it's all connected, I mean, that's really beautiful. I noticed that in your answer of who you are from your core, it is a nature answer. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it is a nature answer. I get that. And it's probably because I am so intensely connected to nature, and living for 9 years in a house in New Mexico where I overlooked 2 creeks.
Wow.
Or one arroyo and another creek. And you have thunderstorms during monsoon season, and experiencing the water horses. If you think about with Aragon, the movie where the water horses come and save the person.
I don't think I've seen that movie.
I don't know why I'm blanking on it, but I've seen those water horses. I've seen how the arroyo filled in the creek, and then the flash flood from the creek cleaned out all the bulk of things. And it's, for me, it just is. And maybe to some extent, the relationship to water is water holds memory. I mean, if you are familiar with Emoto's work and the crystals,
Yeah.
How the crystals are beautiful, symmetrical, and everything. If you say love and gratitude and to the water, or if you are angry and so on, it gets disjointed. So there is part of that, I'm pretty sure, plays into it. And I think it's just me.
Yeah.
And it's not everybody is relating to nature in the same way as I do.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that nature loves diversity.
Mm.
And what if somebody else coming from a different perspective is contributing to that overall diversity instead of everything needs to be the same, which in nature just isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And what came up for me when you were talking about that is that the answer may be already there. So you had lived in this house and you are overseeing the answer to who you
Yeah.
are. So we are closer to our answer, or whatever that is, closer than we think.
I like what you're saying because that feels so utterly true. We probably have a sense of that, but never having asked the question from the core,
Yeah.
we never got to that space.
Yes. That truly resonates with me. And you mentioned that we have to be quiet. And of course, do this practice over a course, of time. But how long do I sit quietly every day?
Whatever works for you. There is no answer. And I resist saying you need to sit for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is, because that may not be working for you.
Yeah.
Are you willing to trust your knowing?
That's beautiful. Really love that. And going back to your statement of who you are from your core, what would you say has been the impact of that answer for you in different aspects of your life and how you show up, as we discussed earlier?
You've been listening to the Thought Leader Podcast. At Thought Leader, we help experts, authors, executives, and entrepreneurs land the most credible and authority-building stages in the world to spread their message and their impact. If that's you, visit thought-leader.com and click on Schedule a Session to get started. Now back to this episode of the Thought Leader Podcast.
I realized that I finally need to do what I have been avoiding to do. It is step up and be me, and knowing that right now, everything that is going on around us, it seems like the world is falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a sign that we are in a transition. And somebody jokingly said, and I really like it, do we need to upgrade from humanity 1.0 to humanity 2.0? And for me, it nails this, but transition also often has chaos.
Yeah.
You need to believe in me. No, we are right. And there is this constant pulling. If I don't know who I am, how am I going to make it through that?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Can I trust myself because I know? And can I go to, yes, to a good extent, I agree with you, but not needing to fit in. I don't have to agree 100%,
Mm.
because that's ultimately what's required if I need to fit in. And so I can stand in my own center
Yeah.
without being constantly pulled all over the place.
I love
And
that.
I realized that in a meditation recently somebody took us through is, okay, go into your center and then step forward and step forward and step forward. And for me, I was staying on my center line. I was not stepping outside of my center, which is a different thing if you really look at it. You can rest within yourself.
Mm. That's really powerful, especially with so many voices, so many distractions today. And the way that you describe it as chaos really resonates and speaks to me. And how you can almost stay calm in that storm that's going around you. And so you would say that the ultimate outcome is peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could, going back to nature, you're becoming the eye of the hurricane. You're not the wind circling. You're the center, you're the eye.
Wow. So as we become, step into our center and stay there no matter what's going on, how would you think we become better thought leaders in that position?
As a thought leader, I perceive that I have the ability to see possibilities that not everybody sees. It's not that I'm the only one, that I'm coming up with something completely new, but percentage-wise to the global population, it's a small number of people, But being able to verbalize that, being willing to talk about that and to contribute it in form of an invitation. What if you look at it from that way? Instead of you have to look from that angle. To be the invitation, you can change a lot. And one thing that I do, because I have been sitting with the question, so what can I contribute to the chaos that is all around? And a contribution is if I can be quiet, if I can extend an energy of care, love, however you want to call it, I shift how things are working. And if you're familiar with Rupert Sheldrake's morphic field, then it begins to make sense. Being able to hold a certain frequency or vibration invites other people to that same level. And then actually, from what he says, it takes a way lower number than we would expect for things to flip than to go about it numerically. Because the vibration, the energy that is emanated by that number is so powerful that it just happens.
Yeah. I love that. So it's collective consciousness.
Yes, exactly.
I love that concept so much. And so speaking of invitation, what is an invitation that you may have, if any, to our audience today?
The invitation I have is play with it. Don't be serious about it. Play with it. Because you are more likely to be successful if you take it lightly instead of taking it serious.
Mm.
You can even just perceive the energy of the word serious and perceive the energy of the word play. Do I need to say more?
It's pretty obvious. I love that. I love that so much. And I feel that, the things that you say are so powerful and so wise that it's going to take a lot of playing with it to get there. And isn't that amazing that we are in this life journey and that we have the power to explore, which is what you invite us to do. And besides nature, what are other things that we can explore?
Explore whatever you are truly interested in. Like, you can love or hate Google with its algorithms. But having watched the one or the other podcast or video, as a sudden on the side strip, I get a lot along the same lines. And it makes my life easier to find others that are along that line. And I have to say, there are podcasts that I am listening to, have been listening to, where I was just utterly fascinated. And I also knew I had to re-listen to it again and again and again to really soak in as much as I can possibly do. And every time I listen to it, I get some new information because I am changing.
Yeah.
I'm letting go of certain potentially fixed viewpoints and open up. And that creates more space to let something in, which then creates more space to let it becomes a positive cycle. So just play with it.
Yeah.
What speaks to you? Trust yourself. Looking back over my life, I have not trusted myself for most of my life. But in the last few years, it's more and more and more that I just trust myself. And even working with people, there is sometimes something that pops in, and I'm willing today to put that out in a gentle way, in a non-judgmental way. I would not have done that 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I love this bit because we tend to look at our earlier versions and judge them and be in judgment and in regret. So how do you prevent yourself from going there?
Counter question. Would you be who you are today if you had not had the journey? Wasn't every step you took necessary to get you to who you are today? So how can I judge that?
Yeah.
I can acknowledge it and say, yeah, this is who I used to be, but that doesn't have to include judgment. Therefore, I am bad.
Yeah. So I love that because then that's a kind of a tool that we can use is counter question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love I also love to honor the earlier versions of me that overcame, that survived, that were interested in moving forward and learning more. And so really love what you have to say about that. And in talking about your podcast, the algorithm and everything like that, what are some things that you can tell us about your podcast, and also that you have learned in birthing this new project?
Okay, two things. My podcast is titled Toward a New World, because my intention is to provide ideas, tools, so people are invited to potentially let go of fixed ideas. And, there is the old saying, you cannot put more into a full cup. A fixed idea makes the cup full. By letting go of that belief, you empty the cup and you can receive new information. And then the other thing is just I have certain people that I tend to follow, like Aubrey Marcus, like Charles Eisenstein, like Matthias de Stefano, that challenge me with their podcasts, and they have guests on it. And I said, I just caught a podcast this weekend by Aubrey Marcus, where he had as a guest Robert Grant, who talked about Hermetic principles. I never had heard about that, or at least not cognitively heard about that. And I was just, whoa, this is so interesting. I want to know more. And then I go to Amazon and see if there is a book and just explore.
Yeah. You live in exploration. I love that. I love that, that's the general theme.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, so during your podcast, as you're navigating being an entrepreneur and a thought leader and a channel for us to learn how to explore these things and these topics and these ideas that we must learn to let go of and question, what would you say is the most satisfying thing for you?
Right now, being a relatively new at podcasting, I don't have a huge following. And so it is satisfying for me when I feel good about what I said. If I was true to myself, if I was willing to put out a slightly challenging perspective. And then if somebody gives me feedback on that, even just likes it, that becomes doubly satisfying. And it's, for me, from my perspective, it's a road that you walk down. And interesting that analogy comes back to nature. You walk in from the country into the city. And there are not many people initially, but you get more and more people as you approach the city and then get into the city. And so that's how I look at it. Am I willing to stick with it? And I have, as I said, I have done podcasts, and after about 4 or 5, oh God, I have to come up with something new, suck it out of your thumb, and not today, I'll do it next week. And that next week became next month. And so it just faded out. And this time and I also correlate that with having a sense of who I am and what my purpose is. It's more a difficulty in deciding, what am I going to talk about this week? Instead of, oh God, I have to come up with something.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so countering that question, what is the most challenging part of it?
To remind myself to have my voice. To not fall back into the old habit of don't offend anybody, don't rock the boat, be gentle. And you don't know. I mean, when I grew up, you can't know that. How dare you say that?
Wow.
To let go of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Many times that voice that we heard in our childhood or in our formative years, or even in, by an authority figure, even as an adult, they become our inner voices. And so how do you combat that?
Today, where I am is I recognize the limitation that imposes on me. And then it becomes a choice. Do I want to be limited or not?
Mm.
I mean, ultimately, life is all about choices. It's not necessarily that an event per se is our choice. An event may just happen, but how I respond, be around that event, that is my choice.
Yeah.
I can go into the hero that overcomes whatever challenge. And look at the hero's journey. Look at Star Wars. He had to overcome his challenges to step into the Jedi he was.
Absolutely.
In the same way, it's, am I willing to overcome that? Or am I going into, oh God, I'm a victim. Everybody is against me. That is where the choice really comes in.
Huge Star Wars fan, so
Me too.
And yeah, I really love what you're saying, and how we can look at the hero's journey. And what are some mindset tools that you use that are related to that statement? Do you go back to your statement to remind you of your voice? How do you use your core answer?
After I came up with the statement, several weeks after, I had the idea to take a picture of myself that a friend had taken that I really liked it. I call it jokingly my Mona Lisa picture, because there is this smile on my face, the mysterious smile. And I put the statement on that picture and put that as a desktop picture. So every time I open the computer, I am reminded. And it's not that I need to read the statement, it's just seeing the whole thing there.
Yeah.
For today, I am following that. I'm being that.
So having that around you as an intention for everything.
Exactly.
Around you. I love it. Yeah, I really love all of this. And we're getting to the end of our time together. But I wanted to see if there's anything that we haven't covered that you want to leave our audience with, because I really want to make sure that you pour into all of us everything that you intended to. And you're just full of so much wisdom and power. And I'm really grateful for this conversation.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share. And basically, I live stream my podcast onto Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you can find it there. And then the audio versions are on my website, beinginawareness.com. And I am again going to restructure that website because I'm starting to see things differently, and then that has consequences.
Yes, it evolves, right?
As usual, yeah. But, if you want to connect with me, you can find me. I'm out there, and I'm making it a practice of being out there, and I will respond.
Of that. Yeah, where else can they find you? And all of these links are going to be in the notes. So absolutely,
Yeah.
people can link. And so what is one final thought that you could leave with the audience?
Be aware that we are in a transition. There is no going back, which so many people were hoping after COVID that we can go back. No, we can't go back. We need to go forward. And what is the world that you would like to see? And how can you, with who you are, contribute to that world? It's not that one leader or a small group is going to create that. This transition requires every single one of us. We're all part of it. And that's where the diversity is. That's where the beauty is.
Yeah, I love it so
That's
much.
where the richness is.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Corinna. This was amazing. You are amazing. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this moment with you and to share your wisdom in the Thought Leader podcast. And I'm thinking that we'll have you back sometime. So thank you so much.
I would love to, and I truly appreciate it for today. Thank you so much,
Thank
Elaine.
you.
That's it for today's episode of the Thought Leader Podcast. Visit our Thought Leader Talks YouTube channel to browse all episodes and show notes and to continue the conversation. We love to hear your feedback, ideas, and success stories. And don't forget to subscribe for more expert information, insights, and inspiration. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Thought Leader Podcast with another relevant conversation you don't want to miss.